This video is meant to give you some more insights into the workings of alcohol addiction and what role your brain plays in this issue. It is meant to help you make an informed decision on why you should stop drinking and also how you can stop. Without the right knowledge, the alcoholic can never make a proper informed decision to quit, and therefore constant relapses mark their journey. Now, as a side note, perhaps you would have preferred seeing my face on camera, but this message needed to be organized and as straightforward as I could make it, so I hope you can treat this video like an audiobook of some sort and listen carefully to the information I'm about to share with you. So let's begin. If you have any idea on what alcohol really does to your brain, you'd be less inclined to ever drink it again. Before we get down to the details of alcoholism, let me tell you real briefly how I have come to the information I'm about to share with you. First, I've been a heavy drinker for 13 years of my life. Like most people, it started out innocent and didn't seem much of an issue. But then as the years ticked by, my tolerance grew bigger and bigger. The amounts I would drink without hardly ever throwing up would increase, and likewise the overall deterioration of my own mind and body was set in motion. With this I mean that any alcoholic will understand feeling depressed, feeling severe anxiety come over them every time they wake up. They will recognize the crazy fast heartbeats, as if their heart is about to blast out of their chest. They will understand the shaking, the paranoia, the blackouts. They will understand all of this because they are going through it in this very moment. With such a huge amount of negatives, how can we ever escape our own addiction? What is the problem? I wondered that for a while before I ever got actual help for my addiction, and it was only after I got help I gained the insights to quit, not just for a little bit, but forever. Now, although I have only started taking sobriety serious since 2021, I do not have many sober years under my belt. I do notice I'm able to observe others drink without having any inclination to drink myself. Now, for the average alcoholic, this is different. They see people drink and enjoy themselves, and they start to crave having a drink themselves. If they don't take a drink, they feel deprived and mentally bad because of not having one. Well then, let me explain to you what happened in order for me to quit this seemingly insurmountable issue. I was seated in a chair at the doctor's office. This wasn't the doctor I normally go to if I have problems. This was someone specialized in addiction and what it does to the human body. I told him I felt depressed. I probably needed to see a psychiatrist or needed antidepressants to stop this constant agony I was feeling through my entire soul. The doctor looked at me and told me that odds are if I quit drinking, I will be healed from all these mental health issues I was facing. This was a very interesting point he made. Up until then, I never fully considered what actually happens to my mind if I sober up, let alone my brain. He went on to say that for 90% of people, if not more, when they quit for at least 6 weeks, things will start to improve dramatically. He followed up by saying, so in order for us to help you, we do prefer people to quit drinking for at least 6 weeks, if not 8 weeks in total. Basically, he wanted me to quit then and there for 2 whole months, which would be the best choice in his opinion. I remember sitting in that chair feeling scared. I knew I decided to get help, but I was still in the middle of what we call alcohol withdrawal. I was only 4 days sober at the time, although I realize now not drinking doesn't mean being physically sober right away. He basically told me in a pretty straightforward way that alcohol is a toxic poison that causes severe mental health issues for the user, and only if they quit can they go back to feeling normal. Well, bingo, feeling normal. Isn't that what we drug addicts want to feel? We are constantly in a state of drug withdrawal in one way or the other. And because of this, we can never feel entirely normal unless we take another drink or another dosage of the drug. I told the doctor, alright, I will stay sober for at least 8 weeks and see for myself. If you are saying I'll feel better and not so depressed and almost suicidal, then I will give it a shot, and I left the office. The good news is I found out after about the 4-week mark, I noticed a huge change. First of all, my sleep went back to normal, and second of all, I wasn't feeling depressed. I didn't have any anxiety every time I woke up in the morning. I didn't have blackouts anymore. I didn't suffer from any of the crazy things I felt during all those years I would be drinking. I guess he was right. But of course it was up to me to reach that decision to at least go without alcohol for a month as the bare minimum to see if anything changed. I saw him again a month after our first appointment and I told him what happened, and he was surprised I really stayed sober. He also went on to explain by then that for most people it doesn't necessarily take a very long time for them to get back to normal, since alcohol gets removed by the body very rapidly. All in all, I was glad with this seeming breakthrough, but here is where things got interesting. I didn't just quit drinking. I of course started to study the nature of alcohol and addiction more specifically in order to help keep myself sober. As I was doing so, my mind expanded to such an extent that I already knew after a month of being sober that I would never go back to drinking alcohol. In fact, the idea sounds so crazy to me if I would go back that I cannot even imagine myself doing it, even though I'm a pretty crazy guy for the most part. So what changed? Well, in my past, like most alcoholics, I tried to quit drinking, and after a month or so I would go back to drinking. This was because of me believing there was a benefit to drinking. Here you have one of the main points in order to break free. You probably are operating under the belief that drinking provides you some sort of benefit. The benefit generally is that it helps us relax and numb our minds from any problem we may face, whether that be a problem mental in nature or concerning physical things like finances, a career, or relationship drama. We drink so that we can numb certain stress and discomfort we feel surrounding these areas. There we can clearly see one of the major issues with alcohol addiction. We have to remove such faulty beliefs if we want to break free. If we can change the belief around, we can learn to approach things in our lives differently so that we no longer are intoxicated and withdrawing from a drug called alcohol. As long as we have withdrawal symptoms on top of our daily life issues, we will feel way worse than someone that has no withdrawal symptoms but similar life issues. Trust me on that one. So what you're going to have to grasp is that drinking does not improve your life. On some level of your being you know this is true, but it doesn't get rid of the major problem which we would call cravings. Even if you quit, most people crave their drug of choice. They cannot seem to go without it, and if they can't have it, they start to crave it even more. Of course, the craving is mostly intensified due to that belief we have that alcohol will be of benefit to us, and when seeing others drink alcohol, we automatically walk the risk of magnifying our desire for a drink. After all, they don't seem to have any issue. They seem to enjoy themselves. Why can't I? Screw this, I'm having a drink. That's how it usually goes if we condense the whole process. Cravings can be easily and most effectively removed by understanding what alcohol does to your brain. By understanding what actually happens to you internally, you will be able to make a better, more informed decision on why you should quit and also why it's better to stay quit forever. So let us go over this part of knowledge so vital to overcoming any addiction. When you drink alcohol, within let's say 20 minutes, as it goes through your stomach into the small intestines, it will enter your bloodstream and reach your brain. The initial feeling is one of relaxation. We all know this. Anyone that has taken a drink will notice they feel more relaxed. Many people who don't heavily drink might even see it makes them sleepy rather quickly. This is because alcohol is an anesthetic. It is meant to numb your mind and body. With enough alcohol in our system, if we hurt ourselves, we may not even notice it. This happens all the time with drunk people. They fall over, they may break their arm, but for some reason they aren't yelling in pain as they would if they were sober. This is due to the effects of alcohol. I could share a bunch of stories in my own life where I damaged my body and I didn't feel the pain at all because I was drunk, but I won't go into that for this video, since I know you must have your own interesting although embarrassing stories of what alcohol has caused you to do. Let's consider two common drugs that humanity can abuse: depressants and stimulants. In which category does alcohol fall? Well, it clearly falls into depressants. It depresses the central nervous system. Now here's something you really want to contemplate in order to make an informed decision on whether to keep on drinking or to quit forever. What does your brain do if you introduce a depressant into the body? It will generate its own stimulants to counteract the depressant nature of the alcohol. It is these stimulants released by the brain that cause the anxiety, paranoia, and shakes we feel once we wake up the next morning in full-blown alcohol withdrawal. But on top of that, we also have the toxic residue of alcohol called acetaldehyde running through our veins. When the body breaks down alcohol, it turns into acetaldehyde, which is even more toxic for all of your organs. So no wonder you feel like crap every time you drank too much. If you drink a little bit of alcohol, you will only experience a little bit of withdrawal. If you drink a lot, you will feel a terrible hangover, that much you can be certain of. Now, what's the issue we face during alcohol addiction? It is our tendency to use alcohol in order to numb the initial withdrawal symptoms we must face after a long binge drinking session. That's right, an alcoholic has spiraled out of control. They drink to feel normal, but yet they don't realize that they feel abnormal due to the fact they are drinking in the first place. Really think about it. You may be struggling to quit drinking. Odds are it's because you don't feel so great whenever you are sober. However, if you've never given your body a chance to get rid of all the alcohol toxins to begin with, how can you ever reach a state of feeling normal? You know, the kind of normal you felt before you started drinking alcohol all those many years ago. When we notice we have a problem with alcohol, we want to cut down. We reason, perhaps I can learn to drink only 2 glasses at max, and everything will be fine. There's a huge problem with this. Did you know the cells in your brain actually have their own way of memorizing things? In other words, if you drink alcohol, even if it's 1 glass, the cells in your brain expect you to drink a huge amount of alcohol, and so in order to keep your body from shutting down and dying, it will release stimulants in response to even a tiny bit of alcohol. These stimulants can cause you to drink more and more. You become out of control. For many years I never knew this was the case. I only knew that if I start drinking, I drink until all the alcohol in my house is gone. And usually it will be multiple bottles or multiple 6-packs of beer or a combination of the two. I would literally drink until I couldn't stay awake any longer and passed out on the bed. Why would this happen? Again, remember the nature of alcohol. It's a depressant. In response to the brain releases stimulants that make us more alert in order to make it able for us to stay somewhat functioning even though we are ingesting a toxic poison into our bodies. After just 1 drink, the brain automatically expects, due to years of drinking, that you will drink a lot of alcohol, so it releases a large amount of stimulants in anticipation of the alcohol entering the body. These stimulants actually make you feel uncomfortable, and since alcohol is a depressant, drinking more and more from a chemical level makes sense. It is actually because we want to counteract the stimulants our own brain is releasing. As we keep on drinking, what ends up happening is we reach a point of such intoxication we can no longer stay awake, so we fall unconscious. Hopefully on our beds, but with some it can happen in some funny places, I'll tell you that much. After we passed out, a few hours later we wake up in a state of total dehydration. But not only that, we mentally and physically feel sheer anxiety, total paranoia due to the blackouts. We feel sick. We feel very on edge, to say the least. I want you to grasp that you feel on edge due to your brain fighting off the depressant nature of alcohol. And if you never drank alcohol in the first place, your brain wouldn't be releasing such a large amounts of stimulants to begin with. This means that you would actually feel normal, like before you became addicted to alcohol. So the issue we are facing is whether we are willing to let our bodies and brain especially withdraw from alcohol and the abnormal amounts of stimulants it released, so we can finally reach a place of mental and physical well-being. The brain will go back to normal and stop releasing stimulants in response to a drug. It knows how to regulate stimulants and depressants on its own, but by introducing a chemical substance that interferes with our brain's normal processes, we are essentially creating a chemical imbalance, and it's this imbalance we mostly feel whenever we aren't drinking, meaning during withdrawal or a hangover, if you prefer that term. That is where we are essentially experiencing a chemical imbalance. On top of that, it's so important to grasp that this chemical imbalance only exists because of us drinking in the first place. So even though alcohol is very good at numbing the negative feelings at first, in the long run it perpetuates the problem. It keeps us stuck in a cycle. That's what addiction is, being stuck in a cycle of something unwanted. So how can you break free from your addiction? You break free from it by understanding what addiction is actually doing to you on a physical level. It is so important to understand why you feel the way you do and what's causing you to feel the way you do. If you decide to stop drinking after being addicted to the substance for perhaps many years, there's no other way around but to go straight through the withdrawal phase. Of course, in some cases, this can be deadly, so I would still suggest you seek medical advice on this journey just to be on the safe side. However, just quitting isn't good enough. It's most valuable to understand the nature of your addiction and what is happening physically speaking, so that it becomes easier to say no to drinking and yes to sobriety. Because at the end of the day, if you want to quit drinking but find it difficult, it's due to you not truly understanding the negatives to drinking and the benefits to sobriety. Ultimately, as human beings, we want to be happy, and we can never be truly happy as long as we ingest insane amounts of alcohol, causing abnormal brain chemistry, both through the depressant nature of alcohol and the stimulants released by the brain itself. The doctor I'd spoken to told me everything would most likely go back to normal for me, and it's only a minor percentage that might suffer from severe underlying mental health issues, and that's why they might need extra help from a psychiatrist or some form of medication. But most of all, he was right in saying that if I stay sober for 2 months, things will improve. Why? Because the chemicals in my own brain could stabilize. And by knowing that is why I feel greater and greater with each sober day. I'm suddenly able to choose sobriety over drunkenness, because ultimately this was why I was drinking all along. I just want to feel good, and as long as my brain has a chemical imbalance due to alcohol withdrawal, and I keep drinking thinking this is what solves me feeling like shit, I can never escape the cycle of addiction. Now you can escape the cycle of addiction too. You just have to honestly dare to grasp that nobody on this planet can help you break free. Ultimately, it's you that's going to set yourself free from years of bondage to a toxic substance called alcohol. Once you stay sober for long enough, you will feel so much better, assuming you didn't have underlying mental health issues. If you do have those, you will discover that having a clear, sober mind makes it easier to at least deal with those issues. They are much harder to face when you have alcohol withdrawal on top of that. I'm sure you can agree on that. So let's condense what we've learned. If you are struggling breaking free from alcohol addiction, what you're mostly experiencing is the initial chemical imbalance alcohol has caused in and of its own. Secondly, as you allow your body to withdraw from this substance, you will discover it's important to study and understand the downsides to alcohol. This will make it possible for you to make an informed decision to quit forever, because there is no logical reason to drink something that is only going to make things worse for you. Thirdly, with these two aspects in place, you can destroy any craving left in your mind, because they only exist due to you believing there was still some benefit to drinking when there are none. Around the world in most countries, alcohol is such an accepted substance. We might be fooled back into believing it's fine to drink it, but be very careful about this. The fact that you became addicted is forever memorized by the cells in your brain. So if you drink only a little bit, your brain responds in anticipation of a huge amount of alcohol, because that's what you've been doing for quite some time now. This explains to us in simple terms why when we start drinking, we can't seem to stop. The brain releases its own stimulants to counter the alcohol consumed, and on top of that, it also remembers the sheer crazy amount you would normally drink, so it releases these stimulants at a much higher rate than someone who didn't yet develop alcohol addiction. These stimulants actually make you feel more and more anxious in a way, and you try to numb that anxiety by drinking more alcohol, because it's the polar opposite to your brain's response. It's a depressant. This should hopefully give you some insight as to why you can never drink again like the good old days, when you first started, and your brain hadn't yet created patterns based on years of alcohol abuse, and also why it's not a bad thing for you to stop forever. In fact, it's by stopping forever you give your brain a chance to stabilize itself, so you end up actually feeling normal. You feel much more relaxed, naturally, calm, confident and happy when you can wake up every morning knowing you can face the day without also having a dreaded hangover. The only price you really have to pay, assuming you haven't yet created permanent damage to your organs by drinking, is to stay sober for 2 full months, to let your brain come off the drug and let your body clean out the mess. Once that happens, you naturally feel better. However, then it's easy to assume one evening of drinking can't be bad. After all, you currently feel great as a sober person, but never forget that the cells in your brain know differently, and they will never truly forget. All you're trying to do is go back to how drinking was when you first started out. Everything seemed better back in the day, but in reality, this was simply because our conscious and subconscious minds weren't yet trained into believing and knowing that drinking could potentially numb physical or mental issues we face throughout life. Ultimately, it doesn't take a very wise person to grasp that the facing life's issues entirely sober is much better, and makes you a much stronger person in the long run, since you aren't using a crutch in order to cope. You learn to use the power of your mind as it was meant to be used all along. One can only do this if they never take alcohol ever again. So are you ready to embrace sobriety? Now, before we end this video, what about our friends, family and strangers all around the world that still drink alcohol? If we live entirely sober, we are constantly confronted with people who still drink. Well, what about them? You don't have to be jealous of them. In fact, if you are close to relapsing. What you have to grasp is that even though they seem to be better off when drinking compared to how you were when you were drinking, they are still walking a risk. Alcoholism doesn't just happen overnight. It's a slow process that develops after years of drinking and years of considering alcohol to be a good solution to life's problems. Anyone that you see drinking walks the risk of one day, for whatever reason, to slide into that line of thinking and become fully addicted themselves. So even if they don't have the issues you had whilst drinking, you are still technically better off by not drinking at all, since you won't ever need a drug that causes a chemical imbalance in the brain, which leaves you feeling like crap for much longer than you realize. The fact remains that most people drink alcohol weekly or multiple times a week, and so they never leave enough space in between their drinks to fully and entirely withdraw from the alcohol itself. Their brain chemistry is quite literally out of balance, although perhaps on a much milder scale. But yet they are still drinking a toxic substance that is a depressant, that can't do anything else other than to cause the brain to get off balance and start pumping stimulants in response to the toxic onslaught it detects. In the long run, physically, life simply isn't as great if people drink occasionally, because they still need to let their bodies withdraw, even from a small amount of alcohol. Why even bother? Don't be lured back into the alcohol trap. You were lured into it by seeing others drink and enjoy themselves, so you figured maybe I should drink so I can enjoy myself too. But at the end of the day, most people without knowing are already addicted to this substance and trying to numb negativity in their lives by using alcohol. Anyone that ever drank because they knew it could make them feel better is already an alcoholic. No exceptions. That is the nature of the addiction. Ultimately, you have a choice. Am I going to keep this cycle of addiction continue and cause constant chemical imbalances in my brain? Or am I going to end this cycle of addiction and let my brain recover so it can then balance everything out and I actually start to feel better both physically and mentally? Yours is the choice. And if there's one thing I hope this video did for you, is that it made you aware that it's valuable and possible for you to study the nature of your own addiction and what it does to your body, so you can finally make an informed decision backed by scientific data to quit forever and not feel bad about it anymore. Embrace sobriety. Becoming an alcoholic was like a journey. It's an addiction that developed over multiple years. Living a wonderful sober life can start today, and the journey will bring you back to a place of happiness and well-being as time ticks on without alcohol entering your system. Trust me, your future self would be very thankful that you decided to quit and embrace life entirely sober with a clear and balanced mind.